When her ferocious pet gets covered in suds by the human, the alien girl loses her mind, explodes into crisis, as Inspector Dorn invades Lion's home to seize Asgar. Fleeing through hidden tunnels, they discover the impossible, an entire Tyroid civilization thriving beneath the mountains. This revelation shatters Arvinian understanding forever, transforming dangerous beasts into sentient equals, worthy of protection, not extinction. The emerald slopes of the Vidya mountain range stretched toward the horizon, their peaks tinged with the purple hue that had fascinated interplanetary scientists for generations. Beneath the twin moons of Arvin, these mountains cast long shadows across valleys of lush, vibrant vegetation unknown to Earth's ecosystems. Nestled along one of these verdant slopes stood a stone dwelling with panoramic glass windows that captured the majestic landscape in all its alien glory. Inside this home, Lyrian, known commonly by her professional moniker Lion, paced anxiously across polished stone floors. Her jewel-toned skin reflected the morning light, casting jade patterns across the walls as she moved. Her silver hair, reminiscent of glacial ice, was pulled back tightly in a practical knot at the nape of her neck. As the planet's foremost xenobiologist, she had earned both respect and notoriety for her controversial research methods and groundbreaking discoveries. 5 years had passed since humans had established diplomatic relations with Arvin. 5 years of cultural exchange, scientific collaboration, and the inevitable friction that comes when two vastly different species attempt to understand one another. Lion had been at the forefront of these efforts, her natural curiosity about other life forms, making her an ideal ambassador between worlds. But today, her mind was not on interspecies diplomacy. The Planetary Council had summoned her to an emergency meeting, and the cryptic nature of the message left her unsettled. Her anxiety was mirrored in the behavior of Asgar, her Tyroid companion, who prowled restlessly around the perimeter of the spacious living area. Asgar was massive even by Tyroid standards. His muscular, feline-like body stood as tall as Lion's shoulders. His 6 legs moved with perfect coordination, and the iridescent scales covering his form shifted colors with his mood. Currently, a deep, troubled indigo. Most Arvinians would never dream of keeping a Tyroid in their home. The species was known for its ferocity, territorial nature, and lethal hunting capabilities. They were apex predators of the northern mountain ranges, creatures to be respected from a considerable distance. Yet, here was Asgar, rumbling deep in his throat as he peered through the glass at the rising moons. Occasionally, he would emit a low, resonant growl that seemed to make the very air vibrate. "I know," Lion said softly in her native tongue, a complex series of melodic syllables. "Something feels wrong today." Her communication device chimed, and she sighed deeply before answering. The holographic display revealed the stern face of an older Arvinian, his skin a weathered bronze, eyes narrowed in clear disapproval. "Lyrian," he said formally, using her full name to emphasize the seriousness of the conversation. "The council awaits. Your presence is required immediately." "Counselor Terran." "I have a situation here," Lion replied, glancing toward Asgar. "My usual caretakers for Asgar are unavailable, and he's particularly agitated today. I cannot leave him unattended." The counselor's expression hardened. "This meeting concerns matters of planetary security. Your pet must not take precedence." Lion bristled at the dismissive tone. "Asgar is not merely a pet, Counselor. He's a research subject of considerable importance to my ongoing studies of apex predator cognition. I've made arrangements with several qualified handlers, but they've all canceled unexpectedly." Terran's image flickered slightly as he leaned forward. "Find a solution. Lyrian. Your expertise is needed. The council convenes in 3 hours." The transmission ended abruptly. Lion pressed her slender fingers against her temples, a gesture she'd unconsciously adopted from her human colleagues. The pressure felt soothing against the beginnings of a stress headache. She had sent messages to every qualified thyroid handler she knew, but none were available on such short notice. Most Arvinians wanted nothing to do with thyroids, viewing them as dangerous pests at best, monsters at worst. Asgar interrupted her thoughts with a sharp, warbling call, his way of alerting her to something unusual. A moment later, the dwelling's communication system announced a visitor at the main entrance. Puzzled, Lion activated the external camera. Standing at her door was a human male, dressed in the distinctive uniform of the Interspecies Biological Security Division. He was tall for his species, with dark hair and an expression of calm professionalism. "Identify yourself," Lion instructed through the communication system. "Dylan Nakamura, IBSD," he replied, showing his credentials to the camera. "I understand you might need assistance with a thyroid." Lion frowned. "How did you know that?" "Your message to Handler Kefiran was forwarded to our division when she reported being unable to assist. IBSD protocol requires that potentially dangerous xenofauna not be left unattended. I've been dispatched to offer assistance." Lion hesitated. Humans rarely understood the complex nature of thyroids, often viewing them through the lens of Earth's predators. Still, she was running out of options. After instructing Asgar to remain in the secure inner chamber, she opened the door. Dylan Nakamura stood respectfully at the threshold, not attempting to enter until invited, a human who clearly understood Arvinian customs. Up close, Lion could see the fine network of scars on his forearms, the kind that came from years of working with dangerous creatures. "You have experience with thyroids?" she asked, skeptically. 3 years with the xenobiology team at Mount Kestrel Research Station," he replied. "I specialized in apex predator management across 5 planetary ecosystems, including 2 years of fieldwork in the Vidya foothills, studying thyroid migration patterns. Lion's bioluminescent markings, delicate patterns across her cheekbones that humans often mistook for tattoos, pulsed with surprise. "You were part of Dr. Helene's research team?" "I was," Dylan confirmed with a slight smile. "She spoke highly of your work, especially your theories on thyroid social structures." Despite her urgency, Lion felt a flicker of professional pride. Dr. Marissa Helene was one of the few human scientists who had taken her research seriously. "Then, you understand thyroids are not simply vicious predators." "I understand they're complex creatures with behaviors we've barely begun to comprehend," Dylan agreed. "And that your specimen, Asgar, represents one of our best opportunities to study them in a controlled environment." Lion studied him carefully before making her decision. "Very well. The council meeting cannot wait. I need someone to monitor Asgar for approximately 6 hours. He's been fed, but he's unusually agitated today. He'll need to be kept engaged, preferably with cognitive enrichment activities." Dylan nodded, setting down his equipment case. "I'm familiar with the protocols, though, if I may suggest something a bit unorthodox." Lion raised an eyebrow, the gesture exaggerated by the movement of her facial bioluminescence. "Unorthodox how?" "Asgar appears to be shedding his outer scales," Dylan observed, gesturing toward the faint dusting of iridescent particles on the floor. In the wild, thyroids would submerge in mineral springs during this phase. The buildup of old scales can cause considerable discomfort, potentially explaining his agitation. Lion blinked rapidly, an Arvinian expression of surprise. "You're suggesting bathing him?" "A controlled cleaning process, yes," Dylan clarified. "I've brought specialized equipment designed for large xenofauna. The process would remove the loose scales, potentially alleviating his discomfort." "Thyroids are not known to appreciate water contact," Lion said dubiously. "Wild thyroids, perhaps," Dylan acknowledged. "But Asgar has been socialized differently. It might be worth attempting, under careful supervision." Lion checked the time and realized she was running out of options. The hydrofoil to the council chambers would depart soon, and this human seemed genuinely knowledgeable about thyroids. Perhaps more importantly, he didn't display the typical human fear response to them. "Very well," she conceded. "I'll introduce you to Asgar, but proceed with extreme caution. His trust is hard-earned." The introduction went better than expected. Asgar, while initially suspicious of the human, seemed to respond to Dylan's calm, confident energy. The thyroid circled Dylan several times, scenting him thoroughly before settling into a watchful crouch. "That's remarkably accepting behavior," Lion noted with professional interest. "He remembers me," Dylan said softly. "I was present during some of the early field studies. Thyroids have excellent long-term memory." Lion felt a new respect for this human growing. "I must depart immediately. The communication system will alert you to any environmental changes, and emergency protocols are accessible through the main console." Dylan nodded, already setting up his equipment with practiced efficiency. "Safe journey, xenobiologist Lyrian." "Lion," she corrected automatically. "My colleagues call me Lion." With a final glance at Asgar, who had begun to investigate Dylan's equipment with cautious curiosity, Lion departed for the hydrofoil station. As the sleek vessel skimmed across the surface of Lake Arvis toward the council chambers in the capital city, she couldn't shake a strange feeling. Something significant was happening, not just at the council meeting, but perhaps in her own home as well. The council chambers bustled with unusual activity when Lion arrived. Representatives from all 5 continental regions of Arvin were present, along with a contingent of human diplomats. The atmosphere crackled with tension. Councillor Terran intercepted her before she could take her seat. "The situation is deteriorating," he murmured, guiding her to a private antechamber. "The conservative faction is pushing for immediate action." "Action regarding what?" Lion demanded. "Your message was deliberately vague." "Regarding the thyroid situation," Terran replied, his voice lowered. "There have been incidents, attacks near the settlement boundaries. The conservative members are calling for a planet-wide culling program." Lion felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath her. "A culling? Based on what evidence? Thyroids rarely approach settlements unless their territories are encroached upon." "Evidence is being presented as we speak," Terran said grimly. "Your research contradicting traditional views of thyroids as mindless predators is being systematically challenged. I fear this meeting was called specifically to undermine your work." "By whom?" Lion's bioluminescence flared with anger. "Inspector Dorn has been gathering support. He claims your methods are scientifically unsound, and your conclusions dangerously naive." Lion clenched her fists. Inspector Varys Dorn had been a thorn in her side for years, a traditionalist who viewed human-Arvinian collaboration with suspicion and considered thyroids nothing more than dangerous vermin. "My research is methodologically sound," she said through gritted teeth. "And I have years of data supporting my hypotheses about thyroid intelligence and social structures." "Then, you'll need to present that data convincingly," Terran said, "because Dorn has brought witnesses claiming thyroids deliberately targeted researchers at the northern outpost." As they re-entered the main chamber, Lion quickly assessed the political landscape. The room had divided along predictable lines, progressive councillors on one side, conservatives on the other, with the human contingent looking increasingly uncomfortable in the middle. At the central podium stood Inspector Dorn. His copper-toned skin darkened with emotion as he gestured to projection images of damaged research equipment. His voice carried across the chamber with practiced authority. "These attacks demonstrate coordinated hunting behavior, specifically targeting our technological infrastructure," he was saying. "They disabled security measures before attacking personnel. This is not random animal behavior. It's a systematic threat to our civilization's expansion." "Correlation is not causation, Inspector," Lion interjected as she approached the central floor. "Thyroids are naturally curious about unfamiliar objects. What you're interpreting as malicious targeting could Simply be investigative behavior. Dorn's eyes narrowed as he spotted her. Xenobiologist Lyrian, how good of you to join us after we began. Perhaps if you spent less time cohabitating with these creatures, and more time observing their natural behavior, you might recognize the danger they pose. My methodologies involve both field observation and controlled studies, Lyon replied evenly. And they consistently indicate that tyroids possess cognitive abilities far beyond what our traditional classification system acknowledges. Sentimentality is not science, Dorn countered. You've anthropomorphized, or should I say, arvinomorphized, these animals because you've formed an emotional attachment to your specimen. The debate continued for hours, growing increasingly heated. Lyon presented her research data, while Dorn systematically attempted to discredit her methodology. The council members listened, occasionally interjecting with questions that revealed their pre-existing biases. During a brief recess, Lyon checked her communication device and was surprised to find a message from Dylan. It contained only an image file, a still capture of Asgar surrounded by shimmering, iridescent bubbles, his scales gleaming with moisture, and what appeared to be enjoyment? Bewildered, Lyon opened the accompanying text. You might want to see this. Asgar has revealed unexpected behaviors during the cleaning process. Contact me when possible. Before she could respond, the council reconvened. As the session dragged into its fourth hour, Lyon found her thoughts repeatedly returning to the strange image. Asgar, the fearsome tyroid, playing with soap bubbles? It seemed impossible. When the council finally called for a day's adjournment to review the presented evidence, Lyon was already moving toward the exit. Councillor Taryn intercepted her with a concerned expression. The vote isn't trending in our favor, he warned. Dorn has been lobbying individual members privately. We need something compelling to counter his narrative. I may have something, Lyon replied, showing him the image on her device. But I need to return home immediately to investigate. Taryn studied the image with puzzlement. What am I looking at? Potentially, evidence that tyroids have play behaviors, a strong indicator of advanced cognition and social development. Play is rarely observed in purely instinctual predators. Be careful, Taryn cautioned. Dorn has supporters everywhere. If he discovers you have potentially groundbreaking evidence. Lyon nodded grimly. I'll proceed with caution. The return journey on the hydrofoil seemed agonizingly slow. As the vessel skimmed across the lake's surface, Lyon found herself wondering what other discoveries Dylan might have made. The human had shown remarkable insight into tyroid behavior, and his unorthodox approach had already yielded unexpected results. When she finally arrived home, the scene that greeted her left her momentarily speechless. On the stone terrace overlooking the valley, Dylan stood beside a large, shallow pool that had not been there when she left. Asgar was partially submerged in the water, which glistened with iridescent bubbles. The tyroid scales had transformed from their usual indigo to a vibrant turquoise, and he was playing. There was no other word for it. He batted at floating bubbles with his forelegs, making chirping sounds Lyon had never heard before. Dylan, noticing her arrival, turned with an expression of excited triumph. You're back earlier than expected. I was just about to send you more documentation. What? How? Lyon struggled to form coherent questions as she approached the surreal scene. It started with the basic cleaning procedure, Dylan explained, his enthusiasm evident. I used a specialized soap formulation designed for sensitive xenofauna. When the bubbles formed, Asgar displayed immediate interest. Watch this. He dipped a wand into a solution and blew gently, creating a stream of bubbles that floated toward Asgar. The tyroid immediately rose from the water, tracking the bubbles with intense focus before leaping to intercept them with remarkable precision. He's playing, Lyon whispered, her scientific mind racing to catalog and interpret the behavior. Not just playing, Dylan corrected. Look closely at the pattern of his movements. He's not randomly swatting. He's creating specific bubble trajectories. I believe he's deliberately crafting flight paths to increase the challenge. Lion moved closer, her professional detachment momentarily forgotten in the wonder of discovery. That would indicate not just play behavior, but abstract thinking and self-imposed challenge creation, hallmarks of advanced cognition. There's more, Dylan said, retrieving his datapad. Once he became comfortable with the cleaning process, I conducted some basic cognitive assessments. Watch. He played a recording showing Asghar responding to a series of hand gestures by performing specific actions, moving left or right, remaining still, approaching, or retreating. You taught him a rudimentary sign language in hours? Lion's bioluminescence pulsed with astonishment. I didn't teach him, Dylan clarified, his expression serious. He already knew it. I simply discovered it by accident when I made a gesture to reach for equipment, and he responded with perfect comprehension. Lion. I believe thyroids already have a sophisticated communication system based on body positioning and resonant vocalizations. Lion's mind reeled with the implications. If Dylan was correct, it would mean thyroids possessed language capabilities, one of the defining characteristics of sentient species. Her research had suggested advanced intelligence, but this went beyond even her most optimistic hypotheses. We need to document everything, she said, immediately shifting into research mode. Every behavior, every response. The Council is voting tomorrow on measures that could devastate thyroid populations across the planet. Dylan nodded grimly. I've been recording continuously, but there's something else you should see. He approached Asghar and made a series of complex gestures. The thyroid rose fully from the water, his massive form glistening in the fading light of day. Then, to Lion's utter amazement, Asghar produced a series of resonant tones and rumbles that seemed deliberately patterned. Is he attempting to communicate? She whispered. Not attempting, Dylan corrected. Succeeding. Watch. He made another gesture, and Asghar responded with a different sound pattern. Dylan then retrieved an object, one of Lion's research instruments, and Asghar produced yet another unique sound. He has names for things, Dylan explained. Names for actions, for objects, possibly even for concepts. I've identified over 40 distinct sound patterns, correlated with specific reference. Lion felt as though the foundations of her understanding were shifting beneath her. If thyroids possessed language, named objects, engaged in play, and demonstrated abstract thinking, they weren't merely intelligent animals. They were potentially a sentient species that Arvinians had misclassified for generations. The implications are staggering, she murmured, reaching out tentatively toward Asghar. The thyroid approached her, producing a unique rumbling sound she now realized he used only for her. He has a name for you, Dylan confirmed. Different from the sound he makes for other Arvinians, I showed him in images. Their revelatory moment was shattered by the harsh sound of the dwelling's alert system. The security feed showed 3 official vehicles approaching the access road to Lion's home. Security forces, she said, immediately recognizing the insignia. And that's Inspector Dorn's personal transport. Dylan's expression hardened. They must have monitored the Council communications. If Dorn suspects what we've discovered, he'll invoke emergency protocols to seize Asghar for public safety. Lion finished. We need to protect him until we can present our findings formally to the full Council. Is there another exit? Dylan asked, already moving to gather their documentation. The research tunnel, Lion replied, activating a concealed panel. It leads to my field laboratory in the lower valley. We can secure Asghar there temporarily. As the hidden door slid open, revealing a narrow passage carved into the mountain itself, Asghar moved toward it without prompting. The thyroid's behavior suggested he understood the urgency of the situation. "He comprehends that we're hiding from the approaching vehicles," Dylan observed with quiet amazement. "Another data point for sentient awareness," Lion agreed, quickly gathering essential research equipment. "We'll need irrefutable evidence to counter Dorn's narrative." They had barely secured the hidden entrance when the dwelling's main door chimed with an official override code. Through the security feed, Lion watched as Inspector Dorn entered her home, flanked by 4 security officers in full protective gear. "Xenobiologist Lyrian," Dorn called out, his voice echoing through the empty dwelling. "By authority of Planetary Security Statute 37B, I am authorized to confiscate the thyroid specimen designated Asgar for public safety assessment. Failure to comply constitutes a violation of planetary law." In the narrow tunnel, Lion exchanged a determined glance with Dylan. "We have approximately 20 minutes before they locate the tunnel entrance," she whispered. "We need to reach the laboratory and transmit our findings to Counselor Terran." As they moved deeper into the mountain passage, Asgar leading the way with surprising purpose, Dylan organized the data on his pad. "The evidence is compelling but fragmented. We need something definitive, something Dorn can't dismiss as isolated behaviors or conditioning." Lion's mind raced through possibilities. If thyroids truly possess language and social structures as complex as this suggests, there should be evidence of communal organization, perhaps even settlements that we've misinterpreted as simple territorial markings. The tunnel opened into a larger cavern that housed Lion's field laboratory, a modest facility equipped with basic research tools and a secure communication system. As she activated the equipment, Dylan continued to document Asgar's behaviors, particularly his apparent understanding of their predicament. "He's maintaining a vigilant posture oriented toward the tunnel entrance," Dylan noted. "He's not just following us, he's actively participating in the escape." Lion established a secure connection to Counselor Terran's private channel. The counselor's face appeared, etched with concern. "Lion, the council chambers are in uproar. Dorn announced he had evidence you've been concealing dangerous behaviors from your thyroid specimen and dispatched a security team. Dorn is attempting to seize Asgar before we can present crucial new evidence." Lion interrupted. "We've made a breakthrough. Counselor, thyroids display all the markers of sentient intelligence: language, abstract thinking, play behavior, tool usage." "Tool usage?" Terran looked skeptical. "Observed just hours ago," Dylan interjected, sending a video file through the connection. "Asgar using water current manipulation to direct objects. Deliberate, purposeful actions to achieve specific outcomes." As Terran viewed the evidence, his expression transformed from doubt to astonishment. This changes everything. But Dorn has already convinced half the council that thyroids represent an imminent threat. We need more than behavioral observations to counter his narrative. Asgar suddenly emitted a series of resonant calls, different from any they had documented previously. He moved to the far wall of the laboratory, pressing his sensory appendages against a section of stone. "What is he doing?" Terran asked through the communication link. "I'm not certain," Lion replied, approaching cautiously. "This is new behavior." Asgar repeated the vocalizations, more insistently this time, and scratched at the stone wall with one claw. "He wants us to remove this section," Dylan suggested, examining the area. "There appears to be a natural fault line in the rock here." Working together, they managed to dislodge the loose stone, revealing a narrow opening that continued deeper into the mountain. Cool air flowed from the passage, carrying unfamiliar scents. "An undocumented tunnel system?" Lion wondered aloud. Her xenobiologist's curiosity immediately engaged. Asgar made another series of vocalizations and moved toward the opening with clear intent. "I believe he wants us to follow him," Dylan said, already gathering portable documentation equipment. "This could be significant." "Counselor," Lion addressed the still open communication link. "We may have discovered something important. Keep the council in session if possible. We'll transmit findings as soon as we can." "Hurry," Terran urged. Dorn is pushing for an immediate vote once his team confirms Asgar's dangerous nature by his absence from your dwelling. The hidden passage descended steeply into the mountain, requiring careful navigation. Asgar moved with confident familiarity, occasionally pausing to ensure his human and Arvinian companions were following. After nearly an hour of descent, the narrow tunnel opened suddenly into a vast underground cavern, illuminated by bioluminescent fungi, similar to those found in Arvinian biology. What they saw inside left them speechless. The cavern stretched for kilometers, its ceiling soaring hundreds of meters above. Throughout the space were structures, unmistakably constructed rather than natural formations. Stone platforms, walkways, and what appeared to be dwelling spaces lined the walls. The floor of the cavern contained what looked like organized agricultural plots, illuminated by strategically placed light-channeling crystals. And there were thyroids, dozens of them, of various sizes and scale colorations, moving purposefully among the structures. "A settlement," Lion whispered, her voice thick with emotion and scientific awe. "An actual thyroid civilization?" Dylan was already recording, his expressions shifting between disbelief and vindication. "Hidden literally beneath our feet all this time." As they stood at the entrance, several thyroids noticed their presence. Rather than displaying aggression, the creatures approached with what appeared to be curious caution. Asgar stepped forward, producing a complex series of resonant calls. The other thyroids responded in kind, their attention fixed on the visitors. "They're communicating about us," Dylan observed. "Look at their body positioning. That's deliberate information exchange." One thyroid, larger than the others with scales in deep crimson hues, approached Asgar. They exchanged a series of vocalizations before the crimson thyroid turned its attention to Lion and Dylan. To their astonishment, the creature made a gesture unmistakably similar to the Arvinian greeting sign, a formalized motion used in diplomatic contexts. "It's mimicking Arvinian cultural behavior," Lion breathed, automatically returning the gesture. "This suggests not just observation of our species, but study and comprehension of our social customs." Dylan slowly raised his hand in a human greeting. The thyroid studied the motion, then approximated it with remarkable accuracy. "We need to document everything," Lion said, her scientist's mind racing despite her emotional response. "This is Feladrax Valley. It must be. The place of legend that our ancestors described as the Valley of Singing Shadows. We dismissed it as mythology, but it was historical record." They spent the next hour carefully observing and recording the thyroid settlement. The evidence was overwhelming. Organized agriculture, tool usage, social hierarchies, communication systems, and even what appeared to be artistic expressions carved into the cavern walls. "This is a fully functioning society," Dylan concluded as they compiled their findings. "With cultural transmission, technological development, and social organization. By any meaningful definition, thyroids are a sentient species." "We need to transmit this to the council immediately," Lion said, establishing a connection through her portable equipment. The signal was weak, this deep underground, but sufficient for data transmission. "This evidence cannot be dismissed as isolated behaviors or misinterpretation." As they prepared their transmission, Asgar suddenly tensed, his scales shifting to a warning coloration. The other thyroids responded immediately, moving into defensive positions around the cavern. "They sense something," Dylan said, checking his equipment. "Vibrations, perhaps." A distant rumble confirmed his suspicion. "Security forces," Lion realized. "They must have located the laboratory and are attempting to access the tunnel system." The crimson thyroid approached, making urgent gestures toward a different tunnel exit. Asgar vocalized something that seemed to carry significant meaning, as the assembled thyroids immediately began a coordinated response, some moving deeper into the cavern with the younger members, others taking positions near the various entrances. "They're protecting their community," Lion observed, "and offering us an escape route." "The data transmission is complete," Dylan confirmed. "Counselor Terran has received everything." "Then we follow their lead," Lion decided, gesturing toward the exit the Crimson Thyroid had indicated. "If we're captured here, Dorn will declare this settlement a threat and move to eradicate it before the evidence can be properly evaluated." The alternate passage led them through a complex network of tunnels that eventually emerged high on the mountainside, kilometers from Lion's dwelling. As they exited, they could see security vehicles converging on the original tunnel entrance far below. "We need to reach the council chambers directly," Lion said, orienting herself. "There's a transport station in the village beyond that ridge." "Will Asgar be safe?" Dylan asked, glancing at the Thyroid who had accompanied them to the surface. Asgar made a series of vocalizations and gestures that seemed reassuring, then turned back toward the tunnel entrance. "I believe he's returning to help protect the settlement," Lion interpreted. "He understands what's at stake." "The bond between you is remarkable," Dylan observed as they watched Asgard disappear into the tunnel. "Far beyond a researcher and subject." "I've always sensed he was extraordinary," Lion admitted. "But I never imagined this." They made their way to the transport station and secured passage to the capital city. Throughout the journey, Lion's thoughts oscillated between scientific excitement and deep concern. The discovery of a thyroid civilization was the most significant xenobiological finding in Arvinian history, but it came at a dangerous political moment, with powerful forces aligned against thyroids and their advocates. When they arrived at the council chambers, they found the building surrounded by demonstrators, some supporting thyroid protection measures, others demanding stricter security against what they perceived as dangerous predators. News of the confrontation at Lion's dwelling had spread quickly. Inside, the council session was in chaos. Counselor Terran spotted them immediately and moved to intercept before they could be noticed by Dorn's supporters. "Your evidence arrived just in time," he said urgently, guiding them to a side chamber. "I've shown it to key swing voters on the council. They're stunned, but Dorn is arguing it's fabricated. We have the original recordings, biometric verification, and location data," Dylan countered, presenting his credentials and research documentation. "As an Earth representative of the Interspecies Biological Security Division, I can formally attest to the authenticity of all evidence presented." "The Council will reconvene in minutes," Terran explained. "Dorn has been arguing that your disappearance with the thyroid proves you recognize its dangerous nature. This evidence contradicts his entire narrative." When the session resumed, Lion and Dylan were called to the central podium. Inspector Dorn's expression darkened as he saw them, his composure momentarily slipping. "Xenobiologist Lyrian," the head counselor addressed her formally. "You stand accused of harboring a dangerous predator species and obstructing a lawful security action. How do you respond?" Lion stood tall, her bioluminescence pulsing with conviction. "I respond with evidence that will transform our understanding of thyroids and our responsibility toward them as a civilization." Over the next hour, she and Dylan presented their findings, the language capabilities, the social structures, the hidden settlement, and most importantly, the clear indicators of sentience and civilization. The council chamber grew increasingly silent as the evidence mounted, even Dorn's most steadfast supporters appearing shaken by the revelations. "What you're suggesting is that we have been misclassifying an entire sentient species as dangerous animals," the head counselor summarized when they concluded. "That our expansion into the mountain territories has been encroaching on an established civilization, rather than merely claiming uninhabited wilderness." "That is precisely what the evidence indicates," Lion confirmed. "The implications are profound, both scientifically and ethically." Inspector Dorn finally rose to speak, his voice tight with controlled anger. These findings, while interesting, require extensive verification. In the meantime, the security threat remains. Tyroids have attacked our outposts. Have they attacked, Inspector, or defended? Dylan interjected. If we discovered an unknown species had built structures on Earth territory without communication or permission, we might respond defensively as well. The human speaks truth, Counselor Taryn added. What we've interpreted as unprovoked aggression may well be defensive reactions to our unwitting invasion of their territory. The debate continued late into the night, with various council members questioning the researchers and reviewing the evidence. Finally, the head counselor called for order. This discovery necessitates a fundamental reconsideration of our policies, she announced. I propose the following immediate actions. First, the establishment of the Feladrax Valley Sanctuary as a protected zone for Tyroid civilization study and preservation. Second, the formation of a communication task force to establish formal contact protocols. Third, the suspension of all expansion activities in identified Tyroid territories, pending full assessment. The vote that followed was not unanimous, but the majority was clear. The evidence had swayed enough council members to secure protection for the Tyroids, while further research could be conducted. Inspector Dorn and his supporters were outvoted, though their dissenting opinions were noted in the official record. As the session adjourned, Lion found herself experiencing an unfamiliar emotion, a mixture of scientific vindication and profound relief. Years of research had culminated in this moment of paradigm-shifting discovery, and the implications would ripple through Arvinian society for generations. Your work will change how we understand interspecies relations across planetary systems, Dylan said quietly as they left the chambers. Not just between Arvinians and Tyroids, but potentially between all sentient species we encounter. Our work, Lion corrected him. Without your insights and approach, we might never have discovered the truth. Your willingness to see beyond conventional assumptions made this possible. In the days that followed, a formal research and diplomatic outpost was established near the entrance to Feladrax Valley. Under strict protocols designed to respect Tyroid sovereignty, initial communication efforts began. Asgar served as a crucial intermediary, his familiarity with both human and Arvinian behavior providing a bridge between species. Lion and Dylan worked side by side, documenting the increasingly complex interactions and developing a more sophisticated understanding of Tyroid language and culture. Their professional collaboration gradually evolved into something deeper, a connection that transcended their different biologies and cultural backgrounds. One evening, as they reviewed their findings on the terrace of the new research facility, Lion found herself studying Dylan's face in the fading light. There was something compelling about his features, about the way his expression changed when he made a new discovery or solved a difficult problem. "Something on your mind?" he asked, noticing her gaze. "I've been considering the nature of recognition," she replied thoughtfully. "How beings from entirely different evolutionary paths can still recognize intelligence, emotion, and worth in one another. It seems there are some qualities that transcend biological differences." Dylan smiled. "Like curiosity, compassion, the desire to understand rather than fear the unknown?" "Precisely," Lion agreed, her bioluminescence pulsing in the gentle pattern that Dylan had come to recognize as contentment. "Those qualities brought you to my door that day, with your unorthodox suggestion about bathing a supposedly ferocious predator. And those same qualities led you to trust a strange human with your precious research subject," Dylan added. From the valley below came the resonant calls of Tyroids, communicating in the twilight. A sound, once feared by Arvinians, that was slowly becoming appreciated for its complex beauty. "The Council is reviewing similar potential misclassifications across multiple species," Lion noted, checking her recent communications. "This discovery has opened minds to possibilities previously dismissed. It's often the most unexpected moments that lead to the greatest breakthroughs, Dylan observed. Who would have thought that soap bubbles would help reveal an entire civilization? Lion laughed, a melodic sound that Dylan had grown to cherish. Perhaps that should be the title of my next research paper, Suds and Sentience, How Bathing a Thyroid Revealed an Undiscovered Civilization. I'd read that paper, Dylan said with a grin. In the research facility below them, teams of Arvinian and human scientists worked together, developing new protocols for interspecies communication and cultural exchange. The pioneering work at Felidrax Valley was already being studied as a model for potential first contact scenarios with other unrecognized sentient species. And it had all begun with a seemingly simple act, a human bathing an alien's supposedly ferocious pet, revealing layers of understanding and connection that no one had imagined possible. As twilight deepened into night, Lion found herself reflecting on how profoundly her life had changed in such a short time. Her scientific understanding had been revolutionized, her planet's approach to other species transformed, and her personal life enriched by a connection that spanned worlds. "What are you thinking about now?" Dylan asked softly. "The future," Lion replied, her bioluminescence creating gentle patterns in the darkness, and all the undiscovered wonders it might hold. Together, they watched the twin moons of Arvin rise over the mountains, casting silver light across a landscape that would never be seen quite the same way again.